Hello, everyone. I am visiting you online, and I am with Miss Fanny Passport and Mr. John Okiwole, and we are going to have a panel discussion today, and hopefully you will join us if you are able to discuss creating and sustaining motivation and empowerment in our students. So, I am so happy that I could take part in this. This is a pretty exciting conference. And Miss Passport, what are you? How are you doing? How are you doing today?
Okay, you broke in between, but hi
Oh,
everyone. I think it was to say hi and thanks. I'm really happy to be here today. I am joining you from France, and my experience with this conference is all new. So I'm really excited to be part of this very diverse conference. Maybe a bit about myself.
yes.
So
Right.
I Right. So I have 10 years of experience as an international educator. I was director of teaching and learning, technology integrator, French as a foreign language teacher in IB schools most of the time. So PYP, MYP, DP. I have written a book. Oh, I've written a book, Stretch Yourself, that's published by ISTE with my co-author, Caitlin McLemore. It's for educators, how to help them regain sense of efficacy. And it's also connected to mindfulness and motivating yourself, empowering yourself. And so I'm really happy to talk about my passion with you today.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, Mr. Okiwole, you want to introduce yourself? Oh, yeah. There we
Okay.
go.
So I'm John, and I've had quite some years like Miss Passport in the education section. Um, I've been in technology before then, so technology took me into education. That's been my love to always see how technology can actually transform education. So I don't see disruption, I see making things better. So that's
Hmm.
what I see every time I see about technology and education. So uh, it's great to have someone like me right now that COVID has said, yeah, you're going to sit at home, but you're still going to be learning. So the big question is how technology provides the solution. So thank you, Ms. Passport, for coming around.
Yes. All right. So talking about motivation, it sounds like you are motivated. Um, but Fanny, how might we motivate our learners, whether online or not? I mean, a lot of teachers struggle with this, getting students motivated.
Yes. I'm going to use research from Ryan and Desi. They have funded this theory of motivation that they call the self-determination theory.
Hmm.
So I've learned about it, and I found all the answers for me through this theory. It's empirical, but it's also very practical. So one of the things that was really key in the beginning to understand motivation is it's not really about the quantity of motivation, but rather the quality of it. So how we can't really motivate someone, because sometimes what we feel is we say students aren't motivated enough, or they should be more motivated, things like that. But actually what we can do to really change this is to create the condition where they can draw upon a certain type of motivation.
Hmm.
So how can we motivate them? The authors say that instead of giving our learners a carrot or a stick, that means like instead of giving them a reward
Yeah.
or trying to create conditions where they should want to do something to avoid punishment or to avoid humiliation or shame, we want to create the conditions for quality motivation that's actually going to make a difference in the long run.
Hmm.
So there are two types of motivation. Probably people watching might know about those. there is the extrinsic motivation, which is the carrot and the stick, and then the intrinsic motivation, which is within ourselves. And that's what got me up the morning to talk about this, because I'm so motivated about it and I love it. So this is the quality motivation that we want.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to create the conditions for this type of motivation, then we need to be able to fulfill our learners' three essential needs. And we talk about needs because those are non-negotiables. If you are not meeting those needs, then you can actually have degradation. You can have psychological degradation. And those three needs are relatedness, competence, and autonomy. So I can talk a bit more about it just to give a little bit more context as we move along in this topic. So the first need, relatedness, is how we feel cared for and how we care for others. So most of us, I guess, are lucky to have good families and we are nurtured at home, but not all our learners have this, and the classroom can be the place where they can get this.
Yeah.
So it's that feeling of belonging, feeling of inclusion. It's a give and take, that's service oriented, maybe the mindfulness that we play at school, things like that. The second need, competence, is to make sure that as teachers we can create the conditions for our learners to be able to access learning, so it's not too easy or too difficult, but really at the learning zone, so that students know that they can. Because the problem of something too hard, and even if you say, well, use your growth mindset, persevere. If you persevere and you don't succeed, you feel worse. So it's really important to keep that need in mind to make sure they can access scaffold learning. And then the third one, autonomy, which is really, really important, is to give choices to the learners, or at least to give them a rationale of why they are doing what they are doing, so they can integrate something that they don't relate to into maybe intrinsic motivation, because it's linked to their values. So just to recap how we might motivate learners, we motivate them by intentionally designing learning around those three needs: relatedness, competence, and autonomy.
That's pretty awesome, because that deals with the three key parts of what a human being is. I think is they want to relate, they want to be part of a group, and they want to be autonomous, meaning to grow into mature people who feel like they have choices and can follow their heart and do what is they're passionate about. And the third one,
autonomy.
Okay, I think I said them out of order, but I like how those three aspects. Even as adult learners, as a college student, I need to know that what I'm learning is going to relate to my goal. Like not only the degree, but what I want to learn as an adult. So that's so true. I mean, I motivate myself because I know it's leading to what I want. So thank you. That's cool. All right. So next talking point. What about what kind of motivation might be nurtured more? I mean, how can we get more? You said that you can't really get more, but you kind of need more, or is it? But it's not quantity; it's the quality.
Yep. So I guess now that we have already established, like, it's not about the quantity, but about the type of motivation, and we have two types of motivations. And if we not only, I think if we really observe the kind of extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, we already know that we want more intrinsic motivation. But also the research by Ryan and Deci and the SelfDetermination Theory.org, they have so many papers that really shows that intrinsic motivation, that the quality of this motivation has better outcome in both performance, so learning, or even performance at work. Okay, it's not just for children, it's for everyone. It's the theory of human motivation, that's universal, that works across ages and across cultures. And so this is better for performance as well as wellness. So we know it's better. Why don't we want this? There is a learning, there is kind of a knowing doing gap in schools because we tend to still reinforce external rewards. Just think about, do your homework and this will happen, or you get this grade, or, things like that. But what we really want is to have more intrinsic motivation, which is autonomy supportive. So I guess in that case, if we are true to this belief, then we should be removing the external rewards and all sorts of punishment or all sorts of behavior that reinforces shame or humiliation or ranking or comparison of students. So, for example, things that we take for granted because we don't do physical punishments. At least I hope. But a few decades ago, I mean, I know that definitely my parents had that, and I'm pretty sure in some countries, I mean, let's be honest, it's not completely out of the game, but we have psychological punishment. We have shame, we have humiliation that's still very much here. And so, for example, we don't want to be using little stars or behavior chart like, oh, you are in red, or your name is on the board, or you're going to do this one more time and then this will happen. So trying to avoid this kind of practices because they are really, they undermine motivation and they create detrimental effects for our learners, especially the ones who just look like they have bad behaviors, but it's not the student who is bad, it's the behavior, and there is a cause to that behavior. So we want to make very sure, because these students who have bad behaviors are very fragile and have invisible disabilities oftentimes, like anxiety or depression. And when we do this, when we use those practices, it becomes really horrible for them. So what we want instead is to focus on intrinsic motivation. It doesn't require the stick or the carrot. What we want is to provide autonomy support. So that means choices, giving rationale for the activities that we engaged in, integrating students' interests and values, asking them for their inputs. We want relatedness. We want to make them feel welcome, invited, and cared for, the sense that they matter. And competence is not as much important as the other two, but it's still a need. Competence is really to make sure that they have access to learning. So we scaffold it for them.
Right. That's so cool. I noticed when I used to teach English and I taught math at a higher level and at remedial level. And what I found is if I could get the students hooked or interested, they were the ones that would go out. I wouldn't have to worry about homework, or if we were doing a digital project or something like that, they would do hours on their own without even me asking them to do it. So I think the intrinsic, once you hook into that with the students, I think that's stronger and the extrinsic. And even though in education, we can buy a lot of candy, it doesn't last as long and it's not as strong. It really isn't.
Yeah, and then you have to give them bigger rewards to motivate them, because that's not enough. So and they lose interest over time. So also researchers have shown that they have done a study with a 20-month-old baby or babies, more than one, I guess. They worked with toddlers, and so they found out that they have intrinsic motivation really early on. Like they are interested in helping adults in needs, and they do it because they want to help. And the moment we give them a reward for it, they do it less frequently. So we know that by rewarding intrinsic motivation, we are undermining it. So that's another finding.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Well, how might we put more emphasis on intrinsic motivation then and less on extrinsic? How do we bring that out in our students?
Yeah, so we've mentioned a few ideas for each of those needs. And one more, which the researchers have worked on a lot as well, and that we hear a lot about right now, is mindfulness. Because really, we can actually teach our learners, if they can understand it, that there are two types of motivation. So we can actually, go into the meta language and find out what it means, ask them about their experiences, and engage them in mindfulness, being more aware of themselves as learners, learning how to learn and why something motivates them in different ways, and how they can really try to shift their mindset for certain things and change the routines in our classroom in ways that embrace relatedness, competence, and autonomy, being ourselves as educators committed to this kind of belief and having that identity that we also want to model this for our learners. So some of the things we can do is making a little chart or a little philosophy for yourself as a teacher, and this is important to me, and I will not change this. This is too important. So, for example, I will never correct a child before connecting with the child. I'll never direct before connecting, for example, which is an important aspect of positive discipline. And what I truly believe in as a reflective practitioner is doing it ourselves, like journaling, for example. So as educators, what can we do every day to be more aware of ourselves, to slow down a little bit more so that we go slow to go fast, to change our own routines? And so that's kind of in my book as well, the book I've written with my colleagues. Just remember what it feels to be a learner, to be in a classroom. Would you be a student in your own classroom? Be vulnerable enough to see what you are good at and what you have stretches with and what you want to stretch a bit more. So I guess this one for me is really the piece of awareness. And if we want our students to be more aware, more mindful, then it starts with us, because the conflict we see outside are the conflicts that are inside ourselves. So it leads in or out.
Wow, that's pretty deep. I wouldn't mind talking to you more about that. That's good. That is so good.
Thanks.
So much of what our students see is what we're modeling, and it makes sense that if you're modeling intrinsic ideas and goals for yourself, setting personal goals and achieving personal goals, students will pick that up instantly. They will they are very good at that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say my school adopts this theory of self-determination. What's the theory of self-determination? What do I need to know about that?
Yep. So the theory of self-determination is a theory of motivation by Ryan and Jesse and many other people who are working on this, mostly in the University of Rochester. So this is really the theory of how we can be more autonomy supportive, how can we be more intrinsically motivated. So what it will look like when we are committed to meeting the needs, to creating the conditions where students can meet their needs, and adults as well. So relatedness, competence, and autonomy. And when this happens, when we are all committed to doing this, then learning is more visible and tangible. There are more smiles around. There's less stress. There's more interconnectedness. People are more service-oriented. There's more fairness and inclusion. There's more trusting each other, trusting teachers. And personally, I like Ken Robinson's video that he did a few months ago. Unfortunately, we all have heard the sad news that he passed away. But he talks about the culture and how it is important to have the right culture. And instead of trying to fix right? We don't want to fix a student. We don't want to fix a teacher. We don't want to tweak PD here and there. What we want is to create a genuinely, sincerely, a culture
Yeah.
and stop trying to fix the plants. Fix the soil. So work on the soil, nurture the soil, love the soil, and work with everyone on the ground. So in that case, then that's what I called with that's what I'm trying to focus on with my business that I'm getting started with,
Mm-hmm.
is to create schools like healthy learning ecosystems that attend to the heart, exercise the mind, and engage the willpower. So they are not just schools, they are ecosystems. So we need to work on the culture, we need to look at the climate, and we need to work with different stakeholders in those. In this case, students love learning, teachers love learning. Um, there aren't any rewards and punishments or behavior charts, and it's more like a healthy community.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that ecosystem uh, terminology. It because everything's connected, and
Yeah,
one of the things that I've been doing in this pandemic days is started a garden, and I know that the soil, it's all from the soil, and you can have great seeds in bad soil, and you're still not going to have a healthy plant. So the soil is key. That's so awesome. Okay. How about, well, how can adults be supported to engage in autonomy supported practices? How do adults do that?
yeah, because we've been talking here a lot about what teachers can do to create the conditions for learners, but really what leaders should do, the leaders, administrators, supervisors, they should do the same with their teachers. That means they need to think intentionally and design the system, their learning ecosystem, in ways that is going to fulfill teachers' needs for relatedness, for competence, and for autonomy. So it is hard to say to teachers, be more autonomy supportive if they don't have the conditions for themselves. And they can't really do, it's not in their control to have the kind of support that they need. But maybe what they can do is they can advocate, they can make suggestions, they can share resources like this, for example, or even just trying to see if it is a blind spot from the leadership, or if it is more of we want to or we don't want to, I don't know. So I think they should advocate to have this experience and to say what we want to do with learners is what we want to experience as adults as well. So we want our leadership to support our essential needs for relatedness, competence, and autonomy. That means we want more choices in PD, for example, or
Yeah.
we want to be able to share ideas, or we want to relate more to the rationale of this, or we would like to have, I don't know, a room in the school that is more for calm and mindfulness,
Mm,
where we can de-stress,
yeah.
things like that. So again, we don't fix the plant, but we nurture the soil. So we want to make sure that everyone at school knows that this is important. And I know that sometimes you may be in places where it is not a